All right, so get this. We're diving into the story of Ching Shih, this woman who went from possibly working in a floating brothel
Oh, wow.
to commanding the largest pirate fleet in history.
You're kidding.
Nope, more pirates than Blackbeard ever even dreamed of.
Wow, that's incredible. It's a story that really captures the imagination, right? A woman defying all odds and rising to the top in a world totally dominated by men.
Yeah, and we've got some fascinating sources for this deep dive. We've got firsthand accounts from a hostage who actually lived among her crew, historical records about these battles she fought and won, and even speculation about her early life.
Oh, really?
That just adds a whole other layer of intrigue to this story.
And that's what makes Ching Shih so compelling, right? She's this puzzle with missing pieces, and it lets us explore all these different aspects of her personality and how she came to power.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Who was Ching Shih and where did she come from?
All right, well, she was born Shiyang around 1775 in Guangdong, China. And her early life, it's a bit of a mystery, but there's this theory that she might have worked in a floating brothel before she became a pirate.
Wait, hold on. A floating brothel. That's not exactly your average career path, especially back then. Do we know anything about what that was like?
Unfortunately, the details are pretty scarce,
Yeah.
But it does make you think, right? Did those early experiences shape her leadership? Negotiating with wealthy clients, managing all the rivalries inside a brothel. It could have been the perfect training ground for the cutthroat world of piracy.
That's a really fascinating point. It's like her early life, even if we don't know everything about it, holds clues to how she became so successful later on.
Right, exactly. And it's important to remember that women back then had very limited options.
Right.
So for someone like Xi Yang to rise to the level of power she did, it's remarkable.
Okay, so how did she go from this possible life in a floating brothel to becoming like the pirate queen?
Well, that's where the story gets really interesting. In 1801, she marries this guy Zheng Yi, a powerful pirate captain. He was already making a name for himself in the South China Sea. He had connections to Vietnamese royalty, commanded a good-sized fleet, and was known for being incredibly ambitious.
Talk about a power couple.
Right.
What happened when they joined forces?
They were unstoppable. Together, they formed this confederation of 6 pirate fleets.
Well,
Can you imagine? 6 fleets each with their own flag sailing under her command. It was a huge display of power, a message to anyone who even thought about challenging them.
wow.
By 1806, they practically ruled the waves.
So they weren't just like raiding ships, they were building a whole pirate empire.
Exactly. They demanded tribute from merchants' coastal communities in exchange for protection. It was lucrative business, and their power just grew rapidly. But then tragedy strikes in 1807. Zheng Yi dies.
Oh, no.
Yeah, mysterious circumstances, maybe in a storm, maybe assassinated. The sources aren't totally clear.
So Ching Shih is suddenly a widow, surrounded by all these ambitious pirates all wanting power. I mean, you'd think that would be the end of her story.
You would think so. But Ching Shih was not an ordinary woman. She was a brilliant strategist and master manipulator.
So how did she manage to survive that? And not just survive, but actually solidify her power even more?
Well, she makes this bold move. She marries Zheng Yi's adopted son, Cheng Po-tsai. This secures her control over the Red Flag Fleet, the most powerful of the 6.
Wait, adopted son. There's got to be more to that story.
Well, the sources hint that Cheng Po-tsai was more than just an adopted son. He was also Zheng Yi's lover.
Whoa.
Yeah, complicated relationship. But for Ching Shih, this marriage was a brilliant strategic move.
Wow, talk about a complicated family dynamic. So she's in control now, but how did she keep all those pirates in line? And we were talking thousands of rough-and-tumble outlaws.
Yeah, she knew that power without control is useless. So she implements this strict code of conduct, a set of rules that would make even the most hardened pirate think twice.
Okay, I'm listening. Give me some examples. What kind of rules are we talking?
Okay, so no unauthorized attacks. Disobedience meant beheading. Loot had to be distributed equally. Anyone caught stealing, severe beatings. And desertion, forget about it, ear clipping, followed by, guess what, beheading.
Okay, wow, that's intense. Sounds like she wasn't messing around.
No, she knew that to command respect in that world, she had to be ruthless. But there's another side to this code of conduct that might surprise you.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the twist?
Ching Shih also had strict rules protecting female captives from rape.
What?
They had to be treated with respect and were even allowed to marry pirates if they wanted.
Wait, a pirate code that actually protects women? That's not what I was expecting. Was that common back then?
It was very unusual, especially in the pirate world. It makes you wonder, was this genuine? Was she really trying to protect these women, or was it a calculated move to keep order in her ranks?
Maybe a bit of both.
It definitely adds another layer to her character. So she's got these pirates under control with this iron fist, but also this surprisingly progressive code of conduct. What happens next? Well, Ching Shih wasn't just about keeping things in order. She had big ambitions. Remember those 6 pirate fleets she united? That wasn't just for show. At her peak, she commanded something like 400 ships and up to 80,000 pirates.
That's insane.
So to put that into perspective, 80,000 pirates, that's roughly the size of the entire U.S. Marine Corps today.
Wow.
She was a force to be reckoned with.
So she wasn't afraid to use that force.
Oh, absolutely.
Give me some battle stories.
Oh, there are plenty.
Mm-hmm.
The Qing dynasty, the ruling power in China at the time, they were having their own problems, lots of internal struggles. And this created opportunities for pirates like Ching Shih to really thrive. But they weren't just going to let her run wild. They sent their navy after her multiple times, but she sent them packing every time, burning ships, captured vessels, the whole deal.
Whoa. Those must have been some epic battles. I bet those government officials were pulling their hair out, trying to figure out how to stop her.
Oh, they were definitely frustrated. But there's one battle in particular that shows just how brilliant Ching Shih was as a strategist.
Okay, I'm all ears.
It's called the Battle of the Tiger's Mouth in 1809.
Okay, that name sounds intense. Tell me everything.
All right, so the Qing dynasty, they realized they couldn't beat Ching Shih alone.
Right.
So they actually teamed up with the Portuguese Navy.
What?
Yeah, to try and trap her in Tongcheng Bay. Since Ching Shih and her crew had captured the Portuguese governor of Timor.
No way.
So they had a score to settle.
Wow, so now it's like a 3-way showdown. This is getting good.
Oh, yeah. It was an epic standoff. It lasted for 3 months.
3 months. I can't even imagine the tension back and forth during that time.
The pirates were outnumbered, but Ching Shih, she used her knowledge of the bay and her tactical skills to outmaneuver her enemies. At one point, the Qing Navy tried to use fire ships against them.
Fire ships? What are those?
So imagine a ship packed with explosives and flammable materials. They set it on fire and steer it towards the enemy fleet.
Oh my God.
A terrifying tactic meant to cause chaos and destruction.
That sounds terrifying. Did it work?
It was a bold move, but Ching Shih's pirates were too clever. They captured the fire ships, put out the flames, and even used the wood for fuel.
Are you serious? They turned the enemy's weapon against them? That's incredible. So what happened? Who won?
After 3 grueling months, Ching Shih and her fleet managed to escape. They even turned some of those fire ships back on the Qing fleet.
Wow.
This victory cemented her reputation as a brilliant strategist, a truly formidable opponent.
So she basically outsmarted both the Chinese and the Portuguese. Talk about a legendary victory. But surely after all this fighting, there must have been some consequences, right? She couldn't just keep battling empires forever.
Well, that's where things take a very surprising turn. Ching Shih was a realist. She knew this constant fighting couldn't go on forever, and that's when she makes a decision that changes everything.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. What did she do?
She did the unthinkable. In 1810, at the height of her power, Ching Shih decides to negotiate a peace treaty with the very empire she'd been fighting for years.
Hold on, she negotiated with the Qing dynasty. After all those battles, all that bloodshed, I would have thought they'd want her head on a platter. What was she thinking?
Ching Shih was always thinking a few steps ahead. You see, she knew the Qing dynasty was desperate to end the pirate threat. They'd exhausted their resources, they tried everything to take her down, and they failed. She used that desperation to her advantage.
So what kind of deal did she manage to get? Was it just like a ceasefire or something more?
It was a deal most pirates wouldn't even dream of there. Ching Shih negotiated a full pardon for herself and all of her pirates. No punishment, no imprisonment.
Seriously?
Yeah.
A complete pardon. They just let her and her entire crew walk away.
That's the power of leverage. She knew what she was offering them: peace and stability in the South China Sea. And it gets even better. Not only did she get a pardon, she got to keep some of her ships. She was given a noble title and a very generous cash settlement.
Wow, talk about a golden parachute. From maybe a life in a brothel to the most powerful pirate in history, and then she retires as a respected noblewoman with a fortune. It's an incredible story of cunning ambition and knowing when to play the game.
It really is. And you know, it's easy to focus on the battles and the sheer scale of her operation, but I think what really sets Ching Shih apart is her understanding of power, how to get it, maintain it, and use it to her advantage.
Okay, I'm all ears. What made her such an effective leader, especially in such a chaotic and often brutal world?
Well, for one thing, she wasn't just a figurehead. She was really involved in strategy and decision-making and in making sure her authority was respected. Remember that strict code of conduct? It wasn't just some rules on paper. She enforced it even among her closest allies.
Yeah, the beheadings and ear clippings sent a pretty clear message. It's like a pirate version of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
You got to be tough to survive in that world.
You got it.
Yeah.
But she also understood that real power comes from more than just fear. It comes from loyalty and, to some extent, even admiration.
Okay, so how did she cultivate loyalty among her pirates?
Yeah.
These were outlaws not exactly known for following rules.
She was clever about it. First, she made sure her pirates were well compensated. That system of sharing loot equally, remember? It was enforced really strictly, and it ensured everyone benefited from their victories. It wasn't just about Ching Shih getting rich. It was about enriching the entire crew.
So it created a shared purpose. They weren't just plundering for themselves, they were plundering for the good of the fleet.
Exactly. And second, she wasn't afraid to adapt her tactics. When she realized that constantly fighting the Qing dynasty was unsustainable, she didn't let pride or stubbornness get in her way. She negotiated, she compromised, and she secured a future for herself and her people. Most pirates would have fought to the bitter end, but Ching Shih knew when to fold them, and ultimately that's what made her so successful.
It's like she was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers, always thinking a few moves ahead.
Exactly. And her decision to retire, to walk away from the pirate life while she was still on top, that takes courage and self-awareness.
And let's be honest, that retirement deal she negotiated was pretty sweet. A noble title, a fortune, and a chance to start a new life. Not bad for a woman who started with practically nothing.
It's a remarkable story of ambition, resilience, and the guts to challenge the status quo, even in the most unconventional ways.
We've talked about Ching Shih's rise to power, her remarkable leadership skills, her strategic brilliance. But what about the woman behind the legend? What do we know about her personality, her motivations, her inner life?
That's where things get a little more difficult. You see, we have a ton of information about what Ching Shih did and what she accomplished, but the historical records are pretty quiet about her personal life.
It's like trying to put together a puzzle with some pieces missing.
Exactly. We know she was intelligent, decisive, charismatic, and obviously very ambitious. But what drove her? Did she enjoy the thrill of battle? Was she motivated by a desire for wealth or power? Or was there something deeper, a need to prove herself in a world dominated by men?
I mean, to go from possibly being marginalized to commanding a fleet of 80,000 pirates, there had to be some serious fire in her belly.
Absolutely, and maybe that's why her story continues to fascinate us. We're drawn to the enigma of a woman who achieved such extraordinary things in such extraordinary circumstances.
It's almost like that lack of personal detail allows us to project our own interpretations onto her. We can imagine her as this ruthless pirate queen, a brilliant strategist, a cunning businesswoman, or maybe all of those things at once.
You know, that's a great point. We do have this fascinating firsthand account from a European hostage, this guy Richard Glasspool, who spent some time on her ship. He gives us some really valuable insights into daily life aboard her fleet.
And his account is one of the main reasons we know so much about her code of conduct and how her pirate empire works.
Exactly. But imagine if we had a diary entry from one of the women who served under her. What would that tell us? It could be a completely different perspective on her leadership, her personality, her relationships. What was it like being a woman in Ching Shih's fleet? Were they treated as equals? Did they fight in battles? Were they loyal to Ching Shih out of fear, respect, or something else entirely?
Yeah, those are questions we might never have definitive answers to, but it's definitely interesting to think about. So despite those missing pieces, we're left with this portrait of Ching Shih that's captivating and complex.
A woman who defied expectations, shattered gender norms, and made her own place in history.
And whose story continues to inspire us to question, to explore, and maybe even embrace our own inner pirate.
Maybe just without the plundering and pillaging.
Agreed. But speaking of plundering and pillaging, there's another fascinating part of Ching Shih's story we haven't really talked about yet. Her unique approach to managing, shall we say, the business side of piracy.
Ah, yes, the economics of piracy. It's fascinating, and Ching Shih was a master at it.
We've talked about her code of conduct, how she kept her pirates in line, but how did she actually turn a profit? Was she a shrewd businesswoman, a ruthless extortionist, or somewhere in between?
Well, it seems she was a bit of both. Ching Shih understood that piracy wasn't just about brute force, it was about economics. She and Zheng Yi, and later she and Cheng Po Tsai, they didn't just randomly attack ships. They strategically targeted trade routes, especially ones carrying valuable goods like silk, porcelain, and tea.
So they were like pirate entrepreneurs identifying market opportunities and maximizing their profits.
Exactly. And they weren't just interested in stealing goods, they also demanded protection money from merchants and coastal communities.
Sounds a little like a pirate version of a mafia racket.
Yeah, the comparison isn't entirely wrong. But here's the interesting thing. Ching Shih knew that reputation was everything in the world of piracy.
Right. If you're known for being too brutal or unpredictable, people are less likely to cooperate.
You got it.
Yeah.
So while she wasn't afraid to use force when necessary, she also cultivated a reputation for being, let's say, fair, at least in the context of piracy.
So how did that play out in practice?
She set up a system where merchants who paid their protection money regularly, they could expect safe passage for their ships. It was almost like a pirate subscription service, pay your dues and you get hassle-free shipping.
It's a fascinatingly pragmatic approach. And it sounds like it was pretty effective.
Oh, it was. And she also understood logistics. She established supply lines, storage depots, even markets where pirates could sell their loot and buy provisions. She wasn't just a pirate leader. She's building a whole pirate economy.
Wow, she really thought of everything. And all of this was happening during a time of major economic upheaval in China.
Right, the Qing dynasty was struggling to control their vast territory and keep order along their coastlines. And this created these opportunities for pirates like Ching Shih to thrive. They were filling a void that the government couldn't or wouldn't.
So in a way, she was providing a service, albeit a service with a pretty hefty price tag, and the threat of violence always in the background.
It's a complex and morally ambiguous situation, but it's fascinating to see how she blended brute force with business acumen, turning piracy into a well-oiled machine.
It's a reminder that even in the most chaotic and unconventional worlds, there's always room for innovation and entrepreneurial spirit. Okay, we've covered a lot here. We've talked about Ching Shih's incredible rise to power, her strategic thinking, her complex personality, and even her surprising business skills. But there's one question that's been in my mind this whole time.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the question?
Would we even know her name today if she hadn't been a woman?
That is a really thought-provoking question. And honestly, I don't know. There were a lot of powerful pirate captains throughout history, but Ching Shih's story stands out. And I think her gender definitely plays a part in how we see her, even now.
It's like she completely shattered the stereotype of the rough-and-tumble bearded pirate captain. And by doing that, she forced people to confront their own ideas about what women were capable of.
Absolutely. Imagine the reactions of those government officials when they realized they were being outsmarted by a woman. It must have been a blow to their egos.
Mm-hmm.
And not just government officials, but rival pirates merchants, even her own crew. She challenged the whole idea of what it meant to be a leader in a world that was so defined by gender roles.
It makes you wonder how many other Ching Shihs are out there hidden in the footnotes of history, their stories just waiting to be discovered.
It reminds us that the past is full of surprises, and the most interesting stories are often the ones we least expect. And sometimes those stories belong to the people who defied the odds, broke the mold, and showed the world that greatness can come from anywhere.
So what's next for Ching Shih? Did she just sail off into the sunset with her newfound wealth and title? Or did she have one more surprise up her sleeve?
Well, she didn't exactly sail off into the sunset. Remember that entrepreneurial spirit we were talking about? Seems she couldn't resist a good business opportunity.
So what'd she do? Did she invest her fortune or something? Start some legitimate business? I can't picture her as some quiet landowner.
The sources say she opened a gambling house.
The gambling house? Huh. That's kind of perfect, actually. It fits her personality right. High stakes, calculated risks, the thrill of the game. It's like piracy, but on land.
It does make you think, did she miss the open sea? The battles? Or maybe she found a new kind of power in the world of gambling.
Did her gambling house do well?
No surprise there, it thrived. Ching Shih, even in retirement, seemed to have a knack for making money. She died in 1844 at the age of 69, leaving behind a legacy that still fascinates us.
It's pretty amazing to think about all she did in her lifetime. From potentially being marginalized to unimaginable power, then she gets this peaceful and prosperous retirement. It's a story that has it all: adventure, intrigue, romance, betrayal, and in the end, kind of a redemption.
And it reminds us that history isn't just dates and battles. It's about real people living complex lives, making hard choices in crazy situations. And sometimes the greatest legends come from the most unexpected places.
As we wrap up our deep dive into Ching Shih, I'm just in awe. She was a real trailblazer. A woman who defied expectations, showed the world that even in a man's world, a woman could rise to the very top.
Her story really shows the power of ambition, resilience, and just the audacity to challenge the way things are.
So what can we learn from Ching Shih's incredible life?
I think it tells us to embrace our inner pirate. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To challenge conventions, to dream big, and never underestimate a strategic mind and a willingness to take risks.
And to remember that sometimes the biggest wins aren't on the battlefield, but at the negotiating table.
Exactly. Ching Shih knew when to fight and when to compromise. That's a lesson for all of us, whether we're facing the challenges of life or just trying to find our way.
Well said. And on that note, we'll say goodbye. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never stop using your imagination.